Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are. I'm Joshua Freedman, news editor at Rapaport. Welcome to this webinar on diamond reports in a digital world, the third in a three-part series called Fast Tracking the Future, in which key experts from across the diamond and jewelry industry address the most pressing issues in the sector. This webinar is brought to you by the International Gemological Institute, IGI. First established in Antwerp over 45 years ago, IGI currently operates 29 grading laboratories and 18 schools around the world, with a workforce of over 1,000 dedicated professionals. IGI provides a broad range of services for the jewelry industry, including loose diamond and gemstone reports, jewelry reports and appraisals, diamond screening services, and education in all sectors, from manufacturers and suppliers to independent jewelers, national chains, and iconic luxury brands. In the first episode of this series, we looked at the lab-grown diamond industry. In the second, we discussed the fancy shape market and what consumers wanted. I recommend you check out the recordings of those on rapaport.com and on the Rapaport YouTube page. Today's episode will look at how the role of gemological laboratories may be changing. Are grading reports still just about a diamond's physical characteristics? Do labs have a role to play in verifying a stone's origin? Are labs supposed to be dispassionate describers of scientific fact, or should they be actively contributing to transparency and sustainability in the diamond supply chain? And in a highly timely topic, will diamond reports be going paperless? Our panelists provide perspectives from a member of the trade, a technology company, and of course, a grading lab. They are Hasu Dholakiya, founder of HK Designs, a manufacturer of diamond jewelry, and a subsidiary of the famous Hari Krishna Exports Diamond Group based in India. Welcome, Hasu.
Thank you. Good morning.
Leanne Kemp, founder and CEO of Everledger, a provider of technology solutions to increase supply chain transparency, including in the diamond industry. Hello, Leanne, and thank you for joining us at 1 a.m. in your time zone in Sydney.
It's a very early morning.
And finally, Levy, president of IGI North America. Thank you for joining us from New York. Great to have you with us.
Hey there, thank you very much. Great to be here.
So there will be questions and answers at the end after about 45 minutes. So please post any questions you have, but please post them in the Q&A section, not in the chat. If they go in the chat, they'll probably be missed. In fact, they will certainly be missed. So please put them in the Q&A section. And that will be about 15 minutes or so at the end. So let's start with you, Avi. You have been in the diamond industry for more than 20 years, if I get that right.
More than 20 years, yeah.
You joined the world of diamond grading something like 3 years ago.
I did.
How would you describe the changes that have taken place in grading throughout your career?
Well, throughout my career, I think a lot has transpired. Even since I've got to IGI, a lot has transpired. We built everything on the cornerstones of the 4 Cs and the cut, polish, symmetry. With time, things have evolved. The market has called out certain things that they needed. Laboratories have responded. IGI has responded in kind with different processes, different programs, and different ways of detecting, screening. We've evolved as well.
All right, and what about in, say, the last 3 years, the last 5 years? I mean, things have really taken off quite a lot in that period.
Things have really taken off. That is true. Lab-grown diamonds has come on. It's been a disruptor that's kind of forced, I think, or helped us, I think, along to get more involved with the technology side of things. It's helped us also listen to our consumer, I think, in a better manner than before. Lab-grown diamonds has pushed the industry to be more transparent. We've gone back to education in a big way. So it's kind of helped us move along in the industry. The natural diamond side is also evolving as well. As an industry, I think it's important that we collectively grow, be it technology, as I said before, listening to our consumer, seeing what's important to them, and taking that into account in what we do.
Great, thanks, Avi. Leanne, Everledger's work overlaps to an extent with that of the grading labs. What is your perspective on how the business of, let's call it diamond documentation is changing?
Look, I think there's a fundamental shift that's occurring not only in the minds of consumers, but also in government and policy. And at the very heart of that shifting sentiment is transparency, trust, and traceability. Mapping a supply chain and enabling the connected supply chain is a critical component to not only just asking the simple question of where does it come from, but it's also beginning to ensure that governments, regulators are able to have some oversight. And we know that the G7 is approaching very rapidly. And as a part of that work, of course, there's a large sort of set of undertakings around traceability and a protocol for industry. I will say we work across many different sectors. Critical minerals as a prime example. We think about electrification of vehicles, so electric vehicles and batteries. And all of these industries have some form of traceability element to it. You know, there's a fundamental shift, I think, that's occurring. The industry, particularly laboratories and certification houses, have focused and perfected that material science. But there's a fast rise towards climate and environment science. And that's where I see the role of experts like myself coming together to underpin not just only using traceability as a formation to know where something comes from and deem it its origin, but also traceability is a critical element to knowing the calculation of a carbon footprint, to know the impact journey of that diamond, the diamond stories itself, and all of these are critical to the enablement of consumers.
Great. Well, thanks, Leanne. And there's a number of things there you mentioned that I'd like to go into more detail on later on. But in the meantime, Hasu, from your perspective, from HK, how does the diamond and jewelry industry and the trade view the role of grading labs today?
So in my opinion, I think I agreed with Avi and somewhat not, because we are using grading reports since 2003, and beside QR code and some personalization, I think it's not much change. I think I should, if you ask me, as a consumer, I think we should add more like interactive, where if we are literally going digital, then consumer can go into IGI or GI sites, and beside the forces also, if they can see the image of the stones, a video, or image of jewelry or the video of jewelry. So there is I think more things to do. Definitely, like there is a changes being done, but I think I feel there should be more room to change.
Great. I'd like to focus a little bit on the question of the shift to digital reports, digital grading reports. We can't really talk about developments in grading and not touch on the recent news about the GIA. At the beginning of this year, the GIA went paperless only with its diamond dossiers, its abbreviated diamond reports, which are its most popular grading product. And this was part of the GIA's plan to move to digital with all its reports by 2025. But once the dossiers went into circulation on the market, it started to become clear that the members of the trade had some concerns about their security and also how retailers were reacting to them. We heard some of these complaints, and we ran this story here, that one in the middle there, and just a few days later, you can see that there. Just a few days later, the GIA announced that it was reversing its decision to be 100% digital with its dossiers, and would be offering the option of will be returning to the option of paper reports. So it seems to me that the shift to digital reports might be a little slower than at least I had originally anticipated. Maybe yes, maybe no. Avi, I know that IGI offers some digital reports, but I believe for you it's an option. None of your reports are fully paperless. Is that correct? And how do you see this aspect of the industry developing?
So we chose a bit of a different path. You know, you asked about how we've evolved, and to Hasu's point about what else might be beneficial to a report. Yes, by going digital, it gives you more leverage. It gives you more opportunity to tell a story, right? So what do we do? What we've done with our reports are we've added QR codes where a consumer can zap on that QR code. It'll take you to our website. And there on the website, there'll be an interactive experience where there'll be more explanation about a diamond, about the 4 C's. There'll be more education tidbits on there. Today, we do more co-branding with customers. So that QR code, again, can lead you to a tab to tell you all about a story. HK does a My Story, My Diamond story. You know, having something online is a great way to tell that story with pictures, with data, with information. Customers today or clients today, they want to see information. They're looking to learn more. They're looking to experience more. They want to know more about that diamond or their brand that they're buying. So the QR code on our report takes them to that digital report, to the website, and gives them that information. Now, we've offered it as an option, yes. Because I think it's important that we actually crawl before we walk. We walk before we run with this, because it is brand new. I mean, we're all excited to have an interactive experience, but with that experience, we've got to be careful. We've got to make sure that it lives in a secure place. We've got to make sure that all the links work. We've got to make sure that all the information is correct. You know, we're putting our reputation at further stake by doing that. So we want to make sure that we tell the story correctly and we close up all the loose ends. But it is the way I think of the future. It's going to help us tell our story a little bit better. It gives the customers a bird's eye view of what they're buying, actually.
Avi, do you think in 5 years' time there will still be paper grading reports?
So, you know, part of our industry is very old school. I'd say maybe a year ago, we had prepared some presentations for digital reports for some clients, and we thought it was a go for them. They actually came back and told us that from their testing, they're not ready for it. The customer still wants to feel a piece of paper, look at the paper, read the details, read about the 4 C's, read about the disclosures that we put on the report. But then there are others that we have tested over the past year and a half where we've gone digital. So it really depends on the immediate customer, depends where the consumers are going, and it depends how we can react to them to make sure that they have a good experience, a good, secure experience, actually. So in 5 years, it's a good question. I don't know. It's a hard one to answer. I think we'll definitely be there for sure. But I think our industry still has a tie-in a little bit to the old school. But I think we'll be much more far along the road than we are now, for sure.
Right. And Hasu, what's your company's position on or preference in terms of paper versus digital reports? And what's your impression of whether consumers care whether a diamond report is on paper or digital?
So we are into like B2B as well as, serving to retailers. So when we are trading B2B, yeah, definitely, there is I can see the need of paper reports. But I'll share something like, currently we are working with Helzberg, and we have 2 brands with them. And one brand is like totally digital, like there is no paper reports. And the other one has the physical reports. But we don't see any effect on sales. So that shows that for the consumers, I think they don't much care about if it is, physical or digital. But when you're talking about retailers, I think for them, digital is more, a better option because they don't need to find a space to keep that, all the paper certs. Plus, they need like basically it's more manpower. When they sold the stones, they need to, show the certs. Versus if they have a digital, it's, barcode is right there and they can show it on the phone. So it is like, as Avi mentioned, it is difficult to say, but definitely like, with the digital, I think we have more upper hand with the consumer explaining about the product and the features and benefit.
For sure.
Leanne, how do you see this playing out?
Probably no different to how the telephone played out. I mean, I remember being a child when I had to sit in the corner of my house with a cord, and the only way I could make a phone call was, dial the number. But the reality of today is we're fourth industrial revolution, robotics and AI. There's Web3, which is the third generation of the internet. It's clear that the world is digital, and data is a part of that digital enhancement and enablement. If consumers are not seeing themselves as just the end state of the grading report, and that arguably there's more to be done with the data that sits in their hands, whether it be printed on a piece of paper or in a digital vault format, then I think we will start to see the evolution of it. I would just be concerned that the industry is left behind as you start to see the evolution of digital natives, where they're born literally with a mobile phone in their hand. So I think we are in a transition point. I do agree with Avi. It does depend on the demographic and the geography and the type of consumer and even the type of retailer. We have a big job in industry to educate the consumer, to educate ourselves, to educate the mid-tier. And I think therein lies the challenge. It's less about the capability of digital, and it's more about the capability of the collective human.
Yeah, it's going to bring a lot of creativity, I think, to things as well as we move forward, for sure.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, we're trying for sure.
And Avi, maybe you could explain also to our to the audience a bit more about how QR codes have benefited the industry in grading. What exactly, what are they, and how have they helped?
Well, the QR codes that's our gateway to becoming digital, right? I mean, during the pandemic, we all went to the restaurants and we all zapped on the QR codes and we were able to see menus, right? Touchless. So we use the same vehicles on our reports, be it on the paper or on the credit card, to take it to the website. Actually, we're also putting them on our tags. Those are the programs that we have digital now in stores with certain retailers, where the QR code will be placed on the tag, and you zap that tag, you zap the code, and you get the complete story. And that's where the magic begins, I think, digital. But like anything else, the telephone, right, that we went through from rotary to digital to handheld, it's an evolution. We're definitely on the beginning of that evolution. I'm excited to see where it goes.
Yeah, look, I think the evolution of QR codes is happening as well with 2D data matrix codes. And you think about the microscopic capability of being able to now easily subsurface engrave both on the shank of a piece of jewelry or even within the facet of a diamond. And when you start thinking about the power that sits within just a consumer device like this, it won't be too long before it's literally a machine vision capture, and AI is right at the cusp of that critical change point. So we're not too far away from it. From a technology standpoint, as I say, we've got to consistently invest in the narrative and the education of industry.
Yes, that's important. Thankfully, we've seen a lot of people in the industry try to push the technology side, especially with QR codes, as Leanne mentioned, on diamonds, on the girdle, and certain other aspects. It's a work in progress, but yeah, very happy to see that it's happening.
And Leanne, in the last year or so since the war started in Ukraine, has there been, firstly, extra? I imagine there has been much more demand for documentation, whether it's paper or digital, that shows the origin of diamonds, but also more impetus to work on developments in this area.
Well, the G7 is a prime example, and the US has made it very clear that they would like to review OFAC sanctions, and already the US retailers reacted quite positively towards supporting the OFAC sanctions. But now, of course, the G7 is coming together and looking at it from a European perspective. So I think traceability and the protocols related to it is a critical movement point. We'll see what that looks like in May, because it's just around the corner. I was compelled to speak to the legislative representatives as well as the G7 committee, and just said, look, there are international standards here. The diamond industry is not on an island. Whilst we often put our arms around our own industry and create something of best practice for ourselves, there are internationally bound standards that are well progressed in textiles, in traceability of livestock and meat, that have been around for a very long time. And so I think it's an opportunity for our industry to look towards globalized, internationally proven standards that I think will be the turning point in traceability, which will be fundamental.
Yeah.
I think I can't hear you. Don't know what happened there.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Someone
But
in
some
the
comments
chat room.
can't hear. That's all right. We'll keep moving.
Okay. Well, Hasu, I wanted to ask you about this issue of traceability, because I know this is something that HK and HK Designs has been quite involved in. Looking specifically at the role of grading labs in traceability, how have grading labs helped a company like yours in this area?
So we have launched in 2010, when no one is talking about story or traceability with the Signet as well as Helzberg. So definitely traceability is the key component now. And I think before we don't have had a technology, but now with the Everledger and a lab like IGI or GSI or GIA, I think definitely people look into all the products that they are supplying. They should have the traceability, because by having lab grown as a competitor to the Mine Diamond, we should as a Mine Diamond supplier, I think definitely we should consider the traceability, and not only the traceability, but traceability in such a form where really it is stored with the blockchain. And we are working with Everledger for almost 9 years, and most of our inventories are available with the traceability. So it's not only us, but most of the Indian manufacturers has the facility where literally they can trace back to the origin.
Leanne, I wanted to focus on this issue of how the grading labs kind of cooperate with technology companies in the area of traceability. So how do, on one hand you have an organization that has been focused, that is focused on gemology, and on the other hand you have an organization that has a specialism in technology, and we've seen a lot of partnerships between these two. How exactly do they contribute to each other? How does that
yeah, it's an illuminating question. I mean, I see it in my mind, and I have posed the question to all of our learned friends, IGI, GIA, HRD, everyone, and have said, look, industry with labs are focused in the material science, the 4 Cs. They typically are, white coats in laboratories with microscopes, and they have, very clear scientific baselines. There is an evolution, and that is moving towards climate science and environment science. And it's a completely different skill set to enable the climate science and the environment science. That's going to touch every single part of our supply chain, from as far back to mines, right the way through to even recycled diamonds when we think about the circular economy. We've never had to enable that skill set before, but it's very clear. My expertise has been sitting in that environment and climate science, which is why we'll start to see chief sustainability officers being appointed within industry as a prime example. I think the partnerships between the laboratories and companies like Everledger or environment and climate science brings an entirely new evolution to the type of information that can be joined together. And I see it as a transparency report. That's how I sort of start to look at it, that it's grading, that it's impact stories, it's carbon footprints, it's the scope 3, it's the entirety of what that diamond and or even the jewelry piece has undertaken. Now, typically the laboratories have provided for a declaration or a statement based on that scientific know-how and the techniques that they've deployed. What is a transformational leap in industry is not one company has the full expertise or all the eyes of the complete supply chain to do it by themselves. So partnerships is an absolute key. And second to that, so too, is the trust nature of how you would validate and instantiate and share and securely share data. So therefore, the evolution of partnerships within inside of the grading laboratories is a key factor in moving forward, as well as knowing that they too have to rely upon the experts of both man and machine to enable that transparency report to become truth. Otherwise, as an industry, we're facing greenwashing, and no director on the planet wants to be faced with a greenwashing claim. And so we will start to see that evolve over time. It's undeniable.
Right, and that's interesting. Avi, there was one of the major labs about a year ago launched a new product as a sort of origin product, and one of the things I noticed about it was that the lab in question was taking on a lot of the sort of auditing work that would normally be done by some sort of separate auditing firm, but it was being done by this Gemology Lab. Gathering documents, checking the documents were all legitimate. Almost seems like a bit of maybe even a waste of expertise for a kind of a major gemological scientific institute to be doing something like that. But is that the way that things are going?
Yes and no, I guess. As to Leanne's point, I think the collaboration and partnership is important. Let each part of the supply chain do what they are supposed to do what their job is. What a laboratory can do and what we do with some of our collaborations on this is we verify what is given to us, right? We set up a game plan between the client and Everledger, let's say. We go over the rules of the game of how the stone begins the journey, how it goes into Everledger's files and information, how it goes through their system, how it comes out, how it goes back to the manufacturer, and then how it comes to us. We're the final point. Laboratory is always a final point of verification, and we'll continue to do that. What we'll do is we'll make sure that everything makes sense at the end, but we're not going to tell you that X stone has gone through properly or not. It's got to go through the system before us. If it's Everledger, they've got their rules. They know how to put it together. They'll explain it to us, and we'll kind of just close the ends as it comes to us. But to Leanne's point, partnerships, collaborations, important. Laboratories will collaborate and partner further with the Everledgers of the world or with the HKs of the world to put these things together. I think it's important. I mean, we're telling a great story here. And it's our duty, I think, as ambassadors in the industry to tell our story. And using Everledger's technology, our grading capabilities, the power of manufacturers to put this together, putting all that out there, I think it adds to a great story, and it's our duty to tell it, like I said. And as we continue to do it, I think we'll just do a much better job as we move forward.
Great.
Joshua, I think it shows the gap in industry, to be really blunt. It's clear that we don't have a traceability protocol yet. It's clear that we aren't necessarily completely synergistically aligned. And so someone has to go into the depths to be able to then evolve what is going to become that fifth C or whatever that next data attribute is that will be put onto all of the grading reports. So I think the layer of KYC, know what your customer is also KYO, know the object, which is the diamond, and then there's KYS, know your supplier or know your supply chain. And these sort of three elements are going to be the evolution that we see.
I want to add something here, like, you're asking for the collaboration. I think we have, based lab because we work with them for a long time, and also based, traceability tool, which is Everledger. So Avi and Leanne, I think, right after this webinar, you should announce something in terms of the partnership. So people like us can take a benefit and, come up with the program for the consumer.
Vegas is coming. We can break some news then.
You'll hear it here first. Just want to remind the audience that we will have Q&A, questions and answers at the end. So if anyone has any questions that they'd like answered, please post them in the Q&A section, not in the chat, because we'll probably miss them if they're in the chat. Please post them in the Q&A section in Zoom. So I'd like to move on to a separate but related issue. which is how artificial intelligence, AI, plays into all this. Avi, from your perspective, as a grading lab, how I mean, there were some obvious benefits of AI, and this is, in fact, we did a whole webinar on this issue. But in terms of this particular issue of enhancing traceability, how does AI help there?
In regards to traceability, or in regards to the grading laboratory?
And both, I guess, both.
Well, I'll take the grading laboratory, I guess. So AI, at some point, I think will help us in a big way going forward. We see that IGI right now is a work in progress. We know it takes tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of stones to put this together in the proper way. It's a long road. You need controlled environments. You need consistent supply to keep feeding the machine so they keep on learning. We've been testing, we've been going through it. I know other labs have already kind of come out with certain things, but we feel that it needs a lot more work. Yes, AI is all about teaching the computer to think ahead, to kind of take the information they take in and to go with it. But I think it's still a work in progress. Like I said, a long road ahead, but it will be beneficial to us. That's for sure.
And
Regarding
Leanne,
the other side of it, I think Leanne's probably better to handle that part of it.
Yeah, look, I'm a software scientist, so for me, I've been involved with the very bits and bytes of technology for 35 years, and we're about to break through in terms of the science, and we're starting to see that in a general sense with applications like GPT chat and, of course, the underlying libraries like OpenAI. It will be the most ubiquitous technology on the face of the planet. And I remember actually talking about blockchain a number of years ago in 2015, saying we're moving from what we once knew was the World Wide Web to the World Wide Ledger. And the same thing, I think, with what we're starting to see in AI. It's a persuasive language that will be embedded within the fundamentals of Google search. So the way that we search for diamonds will change. The way that we map a supply chain will change. The way that we interpret physical documents, whether it be Kimberley certificates that are currently scanned or PDFs, will become autonomized, and that data that is unstructured will become structured. So to a certain extent, I think the early warning signs of some of the leaders, the CEO of Google and Elon Musk, about how dangerous potentially AI is, can be seen in the negative lens, but it is the most powerful generational step to technology that we've seen. So therefore, it will evolve every element of industry. And I know that you touched on lab-grown diamonds before. For me, the marriage between the evolution of digital languages like artificial intelligence, the protocols of blockchain, married against the backdrop of lab-grown diamonds, where we can afford to make mistakes. Now, hear me out. We can make and bake diamonds, we can cut and polish and make mistakes. And whilst it has an expense, it's certainly not as expensive as a natural stone. So therefore, the ability to break through in the flywheel of innovation is right here now. We can test with real world diamonds. We can test in a material science world. We can test in an environment world. And if you've got AI, you've actually got the speed of 1,000 geniuses in terms of its digital brain, spitting out results that not many would be able to come up with a whiteboard.
Yeah.
Great. Hasu, I wanted to ask about how the trade sees the future of grading labs. What's the next step from your perspective, and what do you want next from grading laboratories?
So I think if I'm talking about AI at the lab, I think so we are processing about like 60 to 70,000 stone per month. So by having auto grading by AI, it will help us to minimize the turnaround time, and definitely saving in cost, and also improving in the grading reports, means on the color and clarities. So I think AI is very keen tool, and many labs is already using, but I think all labs should implement this. And if you ask me, like, as a manufacturer, our wish is to have machine in our premises. So after we, cut and polish diamond, the grading done within our premises, which saves like, a good amount of time, and will have accuracy in the grading.
Avi, is that something that IGI is likely to offer?
At some point in time, possibly, yes. Like I said, it's a work in progress. So we're definitely looking at it. I mean, it's the most fascinating technology that we have right now. So we have to take advantage of it to some degree. So I think we will, with time.
Great.
Yeah.
Avi, you mentioned a few things at the beginning that I'd like to go into a bit more detail on. You mentioned developments in the grading of hearts and arrows. Can you are you able to expand a little bit more on that, please?
I think I mentioned, well, yeah, I mean, hearts and arrows are a feature that we've had for a long time. It seems it's kind of coming back now. We are getting more inquiries for it. Another feature though that, I don't know if I mentioned it before, is you asked about how we've evolved and what we've done on our reports. We've instituted fancy cut grading recently as well. So that's something that's new. It came after a long period of testing. We're very comfortable with that now on our reports as well. So that's what we're offering that. But hearts and arrows, it is a technology that's been there. We continue to offer it. No issues there.
And Leanne, aside from AI, what do you see as being the next step in the world of diamond grading and documentation?
Look, I really think it comes down to transparency report, which looks at all of the elements across the supply chain and amplifies the right story with the right message to the right consumer. And the overarch of that is this evolution that is very clearly happening around policy and governments, where they're paying significant attention to either the sovereignty of brand. So made in India as a prime example, requires the ability for the Indian government to have some form of abridgment of traceability. The G7 and what's happening in traceability there because of Russia and Ukraine. And I think, nation brands are a very important piece to the global political positioning, and diamonds is at the heart of some of those concerns. So for me, transparency as a whole, looking beyond just the material science, enabling computer science, environment science, climate science, this is the challenge of industry, which means we have to welcome new people to industry with new expertise to enable that to actually, turn the right level of innovation commensurate with industry's readiness to absorb the education and the next level lift. So for me, I think fundamentally transparency will sit as a rails of trade. It's a key. It's been a key since 2015. It's the reason why I do what I do on an everyday event. And I take more comfort in knowing that it's not just limited to one industry, the colored gemstone space, emeralds, rubies, sapphires, even pearls, the work that is happening in the pearl industry at an environment level to ensure carbon sequestration levels, is an outstanding set of investments that are being made. So we're starting to see that now evolve, and finally that message will resonate into the hands of retailers and consumers.
Right. Leanne, on that note, we did have a question in from, I think it's pronounced Yolan Koshak, who was asking about precious metals. What's the latest in the traceability and sustainability efforts in precious metals? Is that something that you can speak to?
Yeah, I mean, certainly I can speak to it from the perspective of LBMA, which is the London bullion market. That definitely has a series of traceability standards that have been well sort of positioned for some time. Arguably, I think if we think about metals, one of the greatest challenges we have in the jewelry industry is that whilst there's recyclable metal claims, it's certainly not findings. And when we know a chain can't be 100% recycled metals, because we simply don't have the solution in the supply chain yet with the manufacturers at a findings level. So again, it comes back to what is the declarations that are being made around these types of, recycle element around those claims. And I think that's really where the lens of, good policy has to sort of lean in. Gold and or any of those sort of metal traceability programs has been around for quite some time, but it's typically sat in the bullion market for investment grade, looking at bars, have been stamped by LBA as a prime example. Less so with our assay officers. So the assay officers have to be key to the strategy to truly enable hallmarking, which can then prove out the process around recyclable metals. Hope that answers the question.
Thank you. And Hasu, we got another question about how the Indian industry has reacted to the kind of the fallout from the Ukraine war. I was wondering if you could expand on maybe how traceability efforts have developed since then. I mean, how has there been more of a focus in the industry on diamond origins since then?
Yes, definitely. Like, after the Ukraine war, like all our customers are, willing to get the traceability. If not traceability, at least they want the surety that all the diamonds are coming from the right source. And as a HK, as I mentioned earlier, we are into traceability since 2010. So we are very much believe in this. We have sold a loose diamond as well as the jewelry. And definitely, by adding the traceability tool, retailer can, make extra margin, because this is something that, you are offering like back to the, mine traceable, no blood diamond or nothing like, involved in sourcing or cutting and polishing or manufacturing jewelry. So definitely traceability is the become very keen in India. And as a diamond manufacturer from India, currently, we are sourcing only from the major mines, which is De Beers and, some mines in Africa and Canada. So if traceability has become a key component, definitely we'll get the benefits of, getting extra premium.
Great. Well, thank you everyone for participating in this webinar. I think we've learned a lot about how grading has changed, how it has changed, how it is changing, how it will change. I want in particular to thank the audience for taking part, for asking questions, and of course to our wonderful panelists, Avi Levy of IGI, Leanne Kemp of Everledger, and Hasu Dholakiya of HK Designs. Thank you everyone, and be well.
Thank you.
Thank you.